Hey all, it's KR King of D&D Homebrew. I'm completing my series here on the Rules Cyclopedia. I'm just going to go over some of the things, the rules we didn't really cover too much, then talk about experience in monsters, a little bit about the setting they provide, some of the tips they have. And, it's been really funny going over these rules after 25 years of playing, both in terms of, every page is a little bit like memory lane, walking down, but every page is also kind of, I don't remember this or that. And just the way we played when I was creating characters and going through the, combat sequence or exploration, just to remember that. Thinking about the good things about it, thinking about the things that I didn't think quite worked. And then, of course, in relation to, something 3E, 5E that I run right now, and some of the other sort of alternative systems that I've been running lately. So it's been really fascinating. So I'm going to dive into the book here, and right here we have, after the combat section, which was what I covered the last time, we have mass combat. This is not something I did this with my friends one time just to see how it worked. We tended not to have huge battles. A lot of times when you see in calculating the value of troops, you're assumed to have name levels, which was 9th and 10th level. We didn't often get there. If we did have a mass battle, I think the one time we did this, we had a big battle, and we were in part of it. We were in some section. We had to go find some item or something while the huge armies raged nearby, so that's how we rolled. But just if you are interested in this, you have two sections. You have the war machine and the siege machine. Why they call them machines, I don't know. Basically, what you do is you take a huge mass and you calculate its basic force rating, which is based on the leadership that you have, experience of the troops, the amount of training they have, and their equipment, right? And they give you the rules for these in terms of the leader, name level, and everything. These add up. You add these factors up. So you have this basic force rating. That's how you calculate the troop class that you have. You add all these factors up, and you can have anywhere from average to elite. And then you divide that by 10, and then you use, taking that divided by 10. So you got these four factors. Find a troop rating, divide it by 10. Then you add things like what percentage is mounted, what percentage use missile fire, what percentage have members that can cast spells, all this different stuff. And they give explanations. And so then you have this rating, right? Then what you have to do is divide these forces, like forces fight like, or different groups will fight the same size. And then you go to this table, and basically it's the difference between these combat or battle ratings determine what happens in a fight. So it's just something that's calculated by these things. Again, I'm not going to go, they have optional rules, mercy and all this stuff. Did it one time, wasn't something I wanted to do, but you do have this option. In a similar way with a siege, you do this whole thing where you calculate the battle force rating and the rating, but there's other elements that are involved in terms of making this work, and you have attacker options and then defender options and stuff. Not something I ever did, but you might be interested. Now, this is very interesting in terms of calculating experience, because we always think of the older systems, hey, you got a little bit for killing monsters, but really what you got it for was treasure. That is largely true. But if you notice here, they have 5 ways that you can gain experience. Role-playing very well, achieving party goals, defeating monsters and opponents, acquiring treasure, and performing exceptional actions. Now, these different, experience from role-playing is interesting, and by performing exceptional actions, because what that is you reward these players, but you can only reward them per session 1/20th of what they need to get to the next level, right? So if you have a 5th level fighter, he needs 16,000 points to get to level 6, 1/20th of 800. That's the most you can give him per session for doing exceptional role play. So what happens is you don't have players going, I'm going to role play, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do every session to try to get those 800 points like 5 or 6 different times. Now, you can also get that from performing exceptional actions, so you can double that. Then the experience from achieving goals is if you achieve some set goal that you've been doing, all the monsters you get to double that. You get again the monsters. Then you get those experience from monsters, which, as we'll see, is not that much. And then, famously or whatever, you get it for coin. Each gold piece of treasure won is 1 XP in terms of the adventuring. And this includes treasure you've taken from defeated monsters, but also rewards that you get for doing some task, money you get paid for some task, and then thieves get it for things they steal, which, gives them impetus to steal. Now, what's interesting here, it isn't just hack and slash and get the treasure. There is role-playing exceptional actions. There is achieving set goals. Now, as many people remember from these systems, and sometimes the treasure hoards that you would find, a character could only go up one level at a time, so that if you had a first level elf and she needed 4,000 to go to second level and they got 10,000, let's say they found an incredible hoard of treasure, gems and jewels and works of art or whatever, she would get the 4 and then one below the next 7,999. So lose 2,000 points, right? Still a lot of points. I mean, how often does this really happen? But again, if you had a big score, you killed a dragon or something with a fabulous treasure, you were not going up, 5 levels at one time. All right, I am not going to go into paths to immortality or anything like this. This is how to bring in other characters and stuff. The next thing that I will talk about is non-player characters, retainers, just to say they have all sorts of rules on this in terms of how you find retainers or how you bring in NPCs, interviewing them, getting them, convincing them to go along, whether or not they'll stay, their morale, the upkeep of these retainers and all this. We tended, as I've said before, we just had, if you needed a fighter or something, there was an NPC hanging around the tavern, I'd roll up an NPC, whether it was the current level or a few lower than the player party, and they would just run with them. So we avoided all this. But if you want to look at this to give you ideas on how this might operate, maybe it'll give you something in terms of making your world have some verisimilitude. That's fine. We never use this. Next, you have Strongholds and Dominions. This is where you get to a name level and you want to build something elaborate rules in terms of how you are granted this by the local nobility, how they would help you out, whether they were cooperating or not. Then in terms of building a stronghold, how much it costs, very expensive, which shows you how much gold and treasure would be in this world. And then finally, the dominions, whether things happen, you're attacked by some force, there's some calamity. We had no interest in running dominions. We would get strongholds, sometimes, capture them or something, and we'd set up some NPCs or something to run them, and then off we went adventuring. Unrealistic, I know. You would settle down. You wouldn't want to risk your life at a certain level, especially a name level in these systems, but we were just players. We were just playing. And oftentimes campaigns would peter out when you got to this kind of level because we wanted to play something else or another character or something like that. But again, very elaborately done. I've read through them. I've not worked them out in practice. I don't know how good they are. Now, the Dungeon Master procedures in this book, people complain, the DMG, especially 5th edition, is not very good. The first one is the greatest of all AD&D. And this one is just a few pages talking about things like aging, if characters' alignment changes and stuff. They do have some stuff here in terms of trying to tell you how charmed persons are supposed to work, how area spells work, handling complaints, damage to magic items, things like clues, this is all they're going to give you if you just picked up this book. Just a few pages on this, and a lot of it's useful. And they also have, they give you a sense of what listening means, opening doors, special doors and stuff. How a haste spells, there was clearly confusion on that. As I said, the magic user spell choice, which we did not pay any attention to, where you're supposed to give them a read magic is one of the spells you give them. We let people pick. This is the kind of thing, too, all through this book, because I had come at it playing for 15 years. I've said this before. We had our whole own set of a lot of house rules and stuff, so we just adapted those to this system. Try to use it as much as possible. You want it to be coherent. But there was a lot of stuff we just said, I'm not going to give everybody a read magic. They can take it if they want. They also cover conditions. There are differences, obviously. Why shouldn't there be between something like 5e or whatever? But they tell you what it's like to be blind, deaf. If you fall, if someone's invisible, it's a -6 to hit them. Prone characters, it's -4 to saving throws, -2 to attacks. You got to take a full round to get up. What a sleeping creature's helpless, you can kill with a single blow. This is the old coup de grace type system, which you don't have anymore. And what happens when you're stunning, and they isolate this by type of stun attack, talking about your movement, your armor class, whatever, a +4 penalty. That's that THAC0, decreasing armor class system. Then you have your monster descriptions. I'm not going to go too much into this. A lot of it will be very familiar to anybody, especially if you've run these old systems. I mean, if we look at the goblins that we ran into in the last session, Basically, they're listed with armor class of 6. The number of hit dice is 1-1, and their size small, as opposed to, medium or large. Their attack's one weapon, so you decide. As I decide, I gave them short swords. That might not have been a good idea. Maybe you give them a club or something. But you also have longbows, and especially if they have if it's the goblin lair, they might have, light crossbows, short swords, they might spears, all sorts of stuff they could have, stuff they found, right? Then the number appearing, 2d8 in the dungeon, and then 6d10 out in the wilderness. That could be a lot of goblins. That means there's a goblin, I don't know, they live underground, so they're like wandering, maybe at night or something, and they're wandering and attacking your group. That could be a nasty little battle, right? They're just normal man saves. And their morale is 7 or 9 if they have the Goblin King with them. They give them an intelligence value. They have a 9 intelligence. That's not super dumb, right? This is why when I ran that thing, I had an ambush, because a 9 intelligence is, it's average. They've been around, and they pile stuff up and hide behind it. They like to ambush, right? And then their alignment is chaotic. People tended to think of them as evil. Well, let's just see how they describe them, right? As a humanoid, which means they're susceptible to charm person. They're small, 3.5 to 4 feet, and very ugly. Their eyes are red and glow when there's little light. We all remember these two when we read The Hobbit. They live underground, 90-foot infravision. And then when they're outdoors, they also can ride dire wolves. 1 in 4 will be riding a dire wolf. That's pretty nice. And there's the Goblin King. So the thing about it is they normally send hunting parties to scavenge food and attack poorly defended groups of humans. They hate dwarves and will attack them on sight. But does that mean they're going to attack a party that doesn't have dwarves? And this is, they have a 9 intelligence. First of all, when you meet them outside, you may try, if it's a huge group like that, actually it's easier to evade. You can just run off, which is what you might want to do. And then we finally have, I kind of skipped over that, the treasure type. Now this is something at 5 XP. So the battle I had, which I think was 2d8, and I think we had 9, right? That's worth 45 points. That's it. And 2 characters died. So you say, well, what's the treasure like? The R is going to be on them if they're just wandering, and then the C, the non-parentheses, is going to be in their lair if they're living there. So let's assume that those goblins that the party group met in that room, that's where they're hanging out. They're staying there. That's where they're keeping what they collect. So how does this work? So when you go to the treasure thing, they have rules on dividing treasure. We always just divided it all up among the party, whatever, who got what treasure. But as a DM, which is why you're getting this, you come down to this list here, the treasure type in layers. And if you remember, out in the wilderness, it's an R for goblins. And then in their lair, which we're saying this is a C. And so you say, well, the C is going to be where it's at. And you do have better chances with C. 20% 1d12 copper pieces, 30% silver, 10% electroplatinum. No gold pieces, no platinum. Then you have a 25% chance 1d4 gems. That could be really good. 25% 1d4 jewelry, that's good. Special treasure, we'll go to that 1d2. And then 10% any 2 items. So that's pretty good. Now, as a DM, I had 9 goblins living in that little room. Not the Goblin King and his horde, right? Which is what maybe you're assuming that this is thing. So you as a GM, you may temper that. You may say, well, now wait a second. They've collected some stuff, but... So how do you count that? How do you know what's in their lair? This is something you have to just do from experience. If so, on the other hand, if they killed those, 1 sleep, they killed all the goblins, 2 guys died, and then they come and they roll for this. If you look at some of these treasure types, you can have a lot of gems and jewels and stuff worth a lot of money, $10,000 gem, right? So again, this takes a little bit of experience here, but this makes the lair of something is almost always worth more. Now, as we all know, if you find a huge hoard of coins, you got to figure out a way. This is where encumbrance comes in. This is where we would take out as much gold or obviously gems and jewels. That was so great they didn't weigh very much. And then we'd bury it down, and then we'd get a group, with, what you really wanted was levitate or something like that, a spell that you could take in and levitate these things out, whatever. So But again, then you get the wandering monsters, and usually these great treasures are in some remote location. But you had to think about that with these encumbrance rules. A couple other things I'll say about monsters is you can have spellcasters, monsters that are spellcasters, and they give you a list here of which ones. If we look at these goblins, there's a chance that you could have up to an 8th level shaman, which is a cleric among goblins. Again, I would say this is a huge troop of goblins. And then there's a chance that you could have a magic user up to level 6. Then they give more on running a campaign. There's a goal of a campaign. The players have to right some wrong or discover something or whatever. And again, you're designing your world here, making it. They give you this sample world of Mystara. They give you, how it came to be. They have these maps and stuff. If we look in here, here's the non-color maps. Here are color maps that you could print. Giving you all the different, and then they describe a lot of these principalities, not all of them, but it just gives you an idea of what you might want to do, how you might want to create your own world using hex maps, some ideas for terrain types, the keying of the maps and everything. Never ran Mystara. I know some people, Mr. Welch has a website, a YouTube channel that all talks about this. He's written books on it. It's a very popular setting. I never ran it. To me, it was just reading it and seeing, oh, here's how you make maps. Oh, here's how far apart things should be, that kind of stuff. So it is useful. Here, the whole planet of Mystara is here. Here's one side of it. Here's the other side, right? That's enough running for the rest of your life, right? And I would like to see going over all these maps. It would be interesting if someone's printed them out. I'm sure they have, and put them all together to see what that is. And then finally, they show you how to convert to AD&D, which is the advanced system. That's what the big kids play or whatever. They want you to buy another set of rules or whatnot to choose from. All right, so there you have a pretty in-depth 4 videos on the Rules Cyclopedia. It was really interesting to go back and look through this system, roll up a party, think about how things work. Think about it in terms of you're discovering this, you're coming at this perhaps from not knowing about it. Although somebody, I don't know, it's probably Matt Colville or somebody said, D&D is a game that you have to learn from someone else. It's really hard to just pick up a rule book and learn it if you've never done any role-playing, never had a sense of what you do to sit at a table and talk this through and come up with this stuff, which is probably the case. So then if that is the case, you're coming at this from playing, you have some knowledge, which is where I came from. And I think in terms of OSR, where people are coming from other, more modern systems and going back to this, they have attitudes. Although some people will talk about the fact that those other attitudes kind of color your expectations, make you think things don't work that actually could work or whatnot. And part of that was why I was trying to do rules as written. I didn't bring any of the house rules that we developed. I tried to just see how this system works. Would I play this? I think I might play this system again. The issues are, 1, you got to find someone to play it with or a group to play it with. Can you find that? 2, there's so much else out there. And how much time do you have? How much time do you have to sit down, work through a whole world or whatever? Maybe you just go out and get some modules they made for this and play those just to see. Certainly, it's not that much time invested in creating a character, right? And so there is an element here where you could quickly, for an evening, you could do a one-shot or something to see if you like the system. Of course, with one-shots, you're probably not going to do a first-level character. You're going to be higher level. And again, once we got into the system, we would start at 3rd level, or I don't know. I guess it was 3rd usually. We didn't go much higher than that, which meant you had more spells, more survivability. So that's, I think, you never know. We'll see if I ever play the Rules Cyclopedia again. But let me tell you, it was great fun going back over it. And if you had any fun watching my videos, please subscribe to my channel. I'm always looking for more. Leave me some comments. I'm hearing a little bit from people out there that have played the Rules Cyclopedia. Love to hear what you think of it. Most importantly, of course, keep playing a role-playing game, some derivation of D&D or something totally different, and tell somebody else about it.